You ever notice how sometimes your house is so quiet, the loudest thing in the room is your refrigerator? That soft little hum suddenly sounds like a full-on concert. No talking, no footsteps, just the fridge. Oh, and you start to think, well, I guess it's just you and me again, buddy. Yeah, that's when it hit me. Not in a dramatic falling to the floor kind of way. It was just a slow, steady silence that started to feel a little too heavy. Like the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels empty. And if I'm being honest, I didn't notice it right away. It crept in, little by little. After 60, a lot changes. The kids are grown, the phone rings less. You're no longer rushing out the door to work. And at first, you think, peace and quiet. This is what I've earned. But then one morning, you sit down with your cup of coffee and realize you haven't heard your own laughter in days. You haven't had a real conversation all week. And suddenly, that peace and quiet starts to feel like something else, loneliness. Now, I want to say something here. This isn't something we talk about enough. It's so common, and yet so many of us pretend it's not happening. Like if we don't say it out loud, it won't be real. But here's the truth. Loneliness doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means you're human, and you're not alone in feeling it. I've been there. So have so many others. But few of us say it out loud. So let's break that silence. Because sometimes just naming it, just saying, yeah, I felt that too, is the first step to changing it. Let's say, have you ever felt that kind of quiet? Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that makes you feel like life's gone a little too still? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. You never know. Your story might be the one that helps someone else feel a little less alone today. You know what surprised me most about retirement? It wasn't the quiet. I expected that. It wasn't the slower mornings or the lack of commute. I actually looked forward to that. What I didn't expect was how easy it was to disappear a little. At first, it felt great. No alarm clock, no meetings, no boss breathing down my neck about spreadsheets. Just me, the crossword puzzle, and endless cups of coffee. But over time, something shifted. The phone didn't ring as much. I stopped getting invited to things, or maybe I just stopped saying yes. Even my daily to-do list went from 10 things to, well, remember to water the plant. I used to have routines, places to be, people to see. Now, days blurred together. Tuesday felt like Thursday, and weekends, honestly, they lost all meaning. And one day, while folding laundry of all things, I stopped mid-fold and thought, wait a second, when was the last time I actually left? Not just a polite chuckle at a TV show, but a real laugh. The kind that makes your stomach hurt and your eyes water. I couldn't remember, and that's when I knew something was off. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was more like a slow fade. Like I was still here, but no longer fully plugged in. And that feeling, it crept in so quietly, I almost missed it. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. That's the tricky thing about loneliness. It's not always loud. Sometimes it shows up dressed as relaxation or freedom, until you realize those peaceful moments have turned into empty hours. And here's what I've learned. Feeling lonely doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It just means you're a human being, wired to connect. I had to learn that the hard way. But once I did, I started looking for ways to reconnect. Not all at once. I'm still allergic to crowded events. But little by little. Now, I'd love to hear from you. When did you realize something was off in your routine? Was there a moment that made you stop and say, wait a minute? Share your story in the comments. It might really resonate with someone else out there. Let's be honest. When we hear the word lonely, most of us think it's just a feeling, a bit of sadness, a quiet moment here and there, something a nice cup of tea and a good book can fix, right? But here's the kicker. Loneliness isn't just in your head, it's in your whole body. Science is finally catching up to what a lot of us have felt deep down for years. Did you know that chronic loneliness, the kind that sticks around, can increase your risk of heart disease, dementia, stroke, and even early death? I know, that sounds dramatic, but it's real. One study even found that long-term loneliness is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15. And here I am just trying to keep my nightly ice cream habit. I remember reading that and thinking, wow, loneliness isn't just sad, it's dangerous. And the worst part, it sneaks up on you. You don't get chest pains or a fever. You just slowly stop connecting. And little by little, it chips away at your energy, your sharpness, your joy. Now, I'm not saying we all need to become social butterflies or join a dozen clubs. Trust me, I still like my quiet mornings and reading in peace. But our brains and our bodies need connection like plants need sunlight. Without it, we wilt. And let's not forget the emotional side. Loneliness can lead to depression, anxiety, even trouble sleeping. It's all connected, which is kind of ironic, isn't it? Disconnection causes all this because we were meant to be connected. That's why I'm so passionate about talking openly about this stuff. Not to scare anyone, but to remind you that you're not alone in feeling alone. And more importantly, it's never too late to reach out, even just a little. So let me ask you this. Do you think we talk enough about loneliness after 60? Yes? No? Somewhere in between? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your honesty might just help someone else open up too. All right. So, after realizing that I was feeling pretty disconnected and that loneliness isn't just a feeling but a health hazard, I knew I had to do something. But let me be clear. I wasn't ready to climb mountains or start salsa dancing on Thursday nights. Although, never say never. What I needed were small, manageable ways to feel human again, to feel alive. So here are 5 things I did, 5 surprisingly simple things that helped me reconnect with life. 1. I took a hobby class. Now, I know what you're thinking. What am I gonna do? Start finger painting like a 5-year-old? Listen, I'm no Picasso. I can barely draw a stick figure that doesn't look like it's falling over. But I saw this flyer at the community center for a beginner's watercolor class. And I thought, why not? I showed up with 0 expectations, except maybe to make it through without spilling paint on my pants. And let me tell you, I loved it. Not because I suddenly became a master artist. My tree looked like a green jelly bean. But because I got to laugh, chat, and just be around people. Turns out, even if your painting stinks, you can still walk away with something beautiful. Connection. Plus, now I can say, I can't paint, but at least I know how to show up on time. 2. I called an old friend. This one took a bit of courage. We hadn't talked in years, and I worried, what if it's awkward? What if we have nothing to say? But I picked up the phone anyway. We talked for over an hour. Turns out he still talks exactly the same way he did 30 years ago, just with arthritis and a hearing aid now. But the warmth, still there. And laughing with someone who knows your old stories, even the embarrassing ones, felt like medicine. Friendship, even when it's been sitting in the back of the closet for a while, can still fit just right. 3. I got a pet. I adopted a cat. His name is Earl. He's grumpy, slightly judgmental, and knocks pins off the table for sport. But he's also the reason I get out of bed in the morning. There's something grounding about having another living soul around, even if that soul has whiskers and zero respect for your personal space. And while Earl doesn't talk, he listens better than my ex ever did. Sorry, Frank. If you've ever thought about getting a pet and you're able to care for one, I highly recommend it. They don't just keep you company, they remind you that you matter to someone, even a furry someone. 4. I went to church or community events. Now, it wasn't like a song or a movie. I went because I needed a reason to get dressed on Sunday. But sitting in that pew, hearing familiar hymns, and chatting with people over coffee afterward, it felt comforting, like putting on an old sweater that still fit. 5. I wrote a handwritten letter. Yes, with an actual pen, on actual paper. I wrote to my niece just to say hi and ask how she was doing. I figured it would take a week to reach her, and maybe I'd get a postcard back in a month. But she called me the next day. We talked. Then we talked again the next week. Now, she calls me every Sunday, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Sometimes reaching out opens a door you didn't know was still unlocked. So, if there's someone you miss, don't wait. Write, call, reach. These 5 things didn't just fill my calendar. They filled my spirit. And I didn't do them all at once. I started with one, then another. And slowly, that heavy silence started to lift. So, let me ask you, which of these would you try? Would you join a class, call someone, get a cat like Earl? Or do you already have your own way of reconnecting? Let me know in the comments. I'd truly love to hear your story. Because the best way to fight loneliness is together. Here's something I wish someone had told me earlier. Being lonely doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you're human. That hit me like a soft truth, wrapped in a warm blanket. Because for a while, I felt embarrassed to admit I was lonely. I thought it meant I had failed somehow. Failed to stay busy, social, or young at heart. But the truth is, loneliness doesn't pick favorites. You could have a full house and still feel disconnected. You could be retired, surrounded by time, but not people. And that doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It means you're wired to connect. That ache, that quiet, it's your soul nudging you. Hey, we need a little more life in here. The beauty of getting older is that we finally start seeing what really matters. And it's not status or stuff or rushing around. It's the simple connections, the little checkmate, the text that says, thinking of you, the neighbor who waves when you bring in the mail, the grandkid who shows you how to use emojis and sends you 20 of them in one message. Growing older isn't about disappearing into the background. It's about showing up, maybe slower, Maybe softer, but with heart, with wisdom, and with purpose. And here's what I've learned. Connection isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a handwritten note. Sometimes it's chatting with the cashier. Sometimes it's looking a stranger in the eye and smiling, like you mean it. Every little connection is a spark. And when you put enough of those together, you don't just feel less alone. You start to feel alive again. So let me ask you, if someone you love was feeling lonely today, what would you say to them? Leave it in the comments, seriously. Your words might be the reminder someone else is waiting for. Because we're not meant to do life alone. Not at 20, not at 60, not ever. You know, there's this quiet little lie that sometimes creeps in as we get older. It whispers, it's too late. Too late to make new friends. Too late to change your routine. Too late to feel joyful again. But let me tell you something. I've come to believe deeply, truly. You are never too late. You are never too old to love life again. Life doesn't hand out expiration dates for happiness. It doesn't say, well, you hit 65. That's it. No more laughter for you. No. If anything, this chapter, this season, is when you finally get to live on your own terms. And that's powerful. Maybe your days are a little quieter now. Maybe your body creaks a bit more when you get out of bed. Ryan sure does. But that doesn't mean your story is over. In fact, some of the best stories have their most meaningful pages written toward the end. Think about it. You have wisdom now. You know what matters and what doesn't. You don't waste time pretending. That's not a loss. That's freedom. So if today you decide to call someone, write a letter, take a walk, or simply smile at the next person you see, that's a win. That's a step back into life. And if you've been feeling a little off, a little invisible, or a little unsure, I want you to remember this. Connection starts with a conversation. And today, you started one. So don't stop here. Leave me a comment, even just a hello. Tell me one thing that resonated with you, or what part of your story you're ready to rewrite. Like this video if it brought you a little light today. Subscribe if you want more real talk, more heart, and more hope. You're not alone. You're not forgotten. You're still here, and your story, it's still being written. Let's keep writing it together.